I think let's begin with the introduction.
Hi guys, welcome to Entrepreneurs Deck. Well, Entrepreneurs Deck is a student-led initiative come up by students across the country and abroad, and we aim to help you guys realize your true potential as an entrepreneur. Before we begin, we'd like to give you a slight disclaimer. All of us are here because we want to share the knowledge and experience that we've amassed over the years, but also because we want to learn from one another. So this is a peer-to-peer learning initiative. We understand that we are not perfect or claim to be experts in the topics that we are covering. And at the same time, we are open to any constructive criticism or feedback that you may have. So feel free to email us about any of your concerns, tips, or suggestions at entrepreneursdeck@gmail.com. A few reminders. On Saturday, that's tomorrow, you'll be receiving an email from Victoria, who sent you the PDF of the module info and pre-reading information. She'll also attach the recording to this session and a post-session form. Students attending from the IST time zone, note that you will not receive a recording. The recording is only for students who are joining us from out of India. And I'd like to repeat, we'll mention a word of the day today during the module, and you will need to enter it in the post-session form, so please pay attention. If possible, we advise you to fill in the form as soon as you get the email. Don't put it off. And the deadline for each session's post-session form is 3 days after it's sent, so make sure you don't miss the deadline. Finally, you will receive your certificates by 12 September. And also, we'll attach extra reading information and resources for you to further explore the content of our modules. So please look forward to that. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind you about some basic Zoom etiquette. We expect you to keep your videos on if possible and mic on mute unless you are spoken to. Kindly use the raise your hand function if you have any questions at all during the module, or feel free to write them in the chat box, and Nikita will make sure that one of us answers them. After we are done with today's module, we're going to have a Q&A as well. So please hold on to your questions, and also do remember, if you still come up with questions after we're done with today and tomorrow's module, you are always welcome to send us an email on autonomousdeck@gmail.com, and we'll make our best effort to get back to you as soon as possible. All right, guys, I think we can begin now. So the presenters for today are myself, Manav, Sara, Sanya, Priyanshi, and Kash. Can you get the next slide, please, Smith? All right. Now we'll start with a poll question. Can you guys just please enter responses on what do you think finance really means? Just tell us your interpretation of finance. If you can have the poll now, please, Smith. All right, about 50% you have already voted. Let's wait for the rest of you. Guys, last 10 seconds. Put in your words quickly. I guess three of you haven't responded yet. All right, we have our poll results now. Uh, the majority of you say that the oversight, creation, and study of money, banking, credit, investments, assets, and liabilities that make up financial systems is finance. Well, I'm really glad that most of you got that one correct. That is exactly what we mean by finance. And in today's module, we'll be looking at finance from a company's perspective, finance from the perspective of an entrepreneur. All right. Okay, over to you, Kash, now.
Hi guys, I'm Kash, and I will start with the introduction to finance. So, finance in general is a broad term that describes activities associated with banking, debt, credits, capital markets, money, and investments. And it basically represents money management and the process of acquiring needed funds. Finance also encompasses the oversight, creation, and study of money, banking, credit, investments, assets, and liabilities. Um, and since finance is such an important life to operate, we break it down into three subcategories, which I will be briefly going into, and then we'll go more into corporate finance. To begin with, we have personal finance. So financial planning that involves the current financial position of individuals. Personal finance is specific to every individual situation or activity. So they depend largely on a person's individual earnings, living requirements, goals, and desires. So, for example, if an individual must save for retirement, they require saving or investing money during their working lives, and it's a long-term plan. Personal finance can also include purchasing of financial products such as credit cards, insurance, mortgages, and other types of investments. Then we have corporate finance, which refers to the financial activities related to running a corporation, usually with a division or department set up to oversee these financial activities. For example, a large company may have to decide whether to raise additional funds through a stock offering. Investment banks may advise the firm on these considerations and help them market the securities that they like for their additional funds. Startups may receive capital from investors to start building their business. Um, then we have public finance, which includes tax, spending, budgeting, and they all affect how government pays for the services that they provide to the public. So the government also helps prevent market failure in certain countries by overseeing the allocation of these financial resources, distribution of income, and they fund their activities through taxation. So Smith, can you go to the next slide? Let's delve deeper into corporate finance because we're talking about entrepreneurship. So corporate finance, as I said, deals with funding sources, capital structuring, and investment decisions. They are primarily concerned with maximizing shareholder value, which is also something that we'll get into in the next few slides, share capital and things like that. The corporate finance activities mainly range from capital investment decisions to investment banking. And they're also charged with governing and overseeing, as I said, the financial activities of the firm. So some key takeaways are, as written on the slide, corporate finance is often associated with the firm's decision to undertake capital investments and investment-related decisions. Corporate finance manages short-term financial decisions that affect the firm's operations and what they do while the business is running. And in addition to capital investments, corporate finance deals with sourcing the capital and figuring out where the capital is coming from. Can we go to the next slide? Actually, yeah. Yeah, okay. So financial modeling. What is financial modeling? A financial model is simply a tool that's built in Excel, Microsoft Excel, to forecast a business's financial performance in the future. The forecast is typically based on the company's historical performance, assumptions about the future, and it requires preparing an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and supporting documents. So these three things either you learn, I feel like, I think we've covered them in the previous sessions that we've had, but a financial model is usually used for decision making and performing financial analysis. It's for the company to figure out whether they need to raise capital or make acquisitions, you know, grow the business, how they're going to grow the business, how much money will be required to grow the business, if they need to sell assets and cut down their costs, if they need to budget or allocate capital in certain areas. It even helps in valuing the businesses. So when you see on the internet that this business is valued for around $200 million, they get that information from making these financial models. So the main sections for a financial model includes, which we will see in the next slide. Could you go to the next slide? The main sections include assumptions and drivers, your income statement for your company, their balance sheet, a cash flow statement, supporting documents, their valuation, a sensitivity analysis, and multiple charts and graphs. So this is an example of a basic financial model. Feel free to take a screenshot of this and you can refer back to the key elements of financial modeling if you want to look more into it. I think we'll give that, yep, okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the stock market now. So before we start, I would like to ask the participants, what do you think a stock market is? In 2 or 3 words or in a sentence, could you write that up in the chat or feel free to switch on your mics? Anyone? Just a simple, you know, a word or two of what you think a stock market is, or what do you think stocks are? The stock market is where a company has these stocks. Okay, a place where people can buy a company's shares. Yeah, good answers. Anyone else? Feel free to write anything you think is the answer. Okay, can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. So you're right. All the two answers are close enough. But let's break it down and let's start by talking about what are stocks and shares. So while these terms may be used in the market interchangeably, there's difference between what a stock is and what a share is. So I would like to explain this by taking an example of a whole pizza. So think of a whole pizza as a publicly traded company's ownership of stock, and then each slide represents a share, not a stock, a share. Okay. So why I'm saying publicly traded company is because if you must, most of you must be aware, but if you're not, there are 2 types of companies: publicly traded and privately traded companies. So publicly traded company is a company which is so it doesn't say private limited after the name. That's the most vivid description of what a public limited company is. It doesn't say private limited after that, and the stock is publicly traded in the market. So it issues an initial public offer. It's called an IPO. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's basically the company which can raise funds from the open market in a stock exchange. And whereas a privately traded company or a private limited company cannot do that. So a private limited company raises funds from private investments and friends and family and that sort of a thing. So the whole pizza is a publicly traded company stock, and each slice represents a share. So let's say one slice represents 1 share. So if you buy n number of slices, it will make you a shareholder or the owner of n slices of the whole stock, so the whole pizza. So if each slice is $10 each of a company XYZ, then if you buy 10 shares of $10 each, you become 10% owner of the whole company stock. So then you are called a shareholder. So this is the difference between stocks and shares. The stock is the whole ownership which the company offers in the market, and share is just a part of it. So if you buy a share of a company in the market, you become a part owner of the company's stock or the ownership. Moving on. So you buy stocks, okay? So how does the value increase or decrease in the market? You must have seen news, and every day the stock market opens from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And so then you see news at the end of the day that this particular stock fell by these many points or this much amount of money, and this particular stock rose by this much amount of money. So why does that happen? So the stock value is actually determined by the supply and demand in the market. So how much of a stock is attracting demand of people in the market? How many people want to buy the stock? The greater the number of people want to buy the stock, the greater its value is. So the demand is greater than the supply, and then the value increases to if you have attended the economics module, you know what I'm talking about. The demand and supply rule in the market is same for any market, and this is how the prices increase in the market. So it's very simple to understand that if more people want a limited amount of share or stock in the market, then the value will increase. And if the case is completely opposite, that the supply is more but the demand is less, then the value decreases. But there are also many factors which influence how the demand and supply of a stock work in the market. So there could be news and announcements, or even rumors in the market, which actually determine how the prices fluctuate in the market on a daily basis. So here, take the previous slide, please. Yeah. So here we're talking about pizzas, right? So if you can see on your screen, there's a news thing which says tacos are more popular than pizza. So if something like that happens, what do you think would happen to the stock of a pizza company or the share price of a pizza company? You could write in the chat or switch on your mics. Decrease. Yeah, that's right, Alice. That's absolutely right. So if something of that sort comes in the market, whether it's a news or a rumor, it will affect the stock price, the share price of a pizza company, of any pizza company. We are just talking about a random company. So this is how news influences the share price, and there could be announcements. So a company could itself, contribute to the fluctuations of its share price. So a pizza company announces new toppings or new flavors or vegan pizza or something which is very popular at the moment, then the share price would obviously increase. So this is how there's increase and decrease in the market. Moving on.
All right, guys. So moving on, we'll be talking about how do you actually earn from stocks in the market? How do you gain or lose money in the market? Okay, 1 minute. Yeah. So, all right. Stocks affect your wallet either directly or indirectly. You can directly earn through dividends that companies pay out from time to time. You also technically become richer when the stocks that you're holding increase in value or the price of the stock increases. However, you only realize your riches or gains when you liquidate or sell those stocks. Now, this is called earning by valuation, because here you're indirectly earning in that you don't directly receive the gains or profits, but just that the value of the asset, which is a stock in this case, increases in value. So if you want to realize the gains in such a case, you would simply just sell the stock at a price higher than what you paid for it. And in case of direct gains may involve dividends that a company directly gives out. You could also earn by, let's say, bonus shares that a company issues, and the same goes for losses. In case a company goes ahead and files for bankruptcy or decides to close its operations, you're at the risk of directly losing all your shares for that company. This is why it is really, really recommended that you thoroughly research the company and the industry of the company that you're looking to buy. All right. Now that was fairly simple. Do we have any questions up till now about stocks, the stock market, or anything anything related to that, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it over here or send your questions to the chat box. Any questions at all? All right. Can you give example of direct? Hitarthi, an example of direct income from the stock market can be dividends that a company pays out. So companies generally pay out dividends to their shareholders in many scenarios, which we will be covering in the next slides. Mostly when a company makes a lot of profit in a particular quarter or year, they generally, let's say, as a means of supporting or thanking their shareholders, they give out dividends. Many shareholders, especially let's say older people, depend on dividends as a regular income. So they generally go for preference shares instead of equity shares, because preference shares generally get a regular stream of income. So yeah, that's how it goes. For direct, you get money directly from the company into your Demat account. Any other questions? Okay, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and I'll make sure I get back to them. Moving on. What's a stock exchange? So a stock exchange in simple terms is just a market for the stocks. It's a supermarket where you buy and sell stocks from existing stock shareholders. Now, this is a secondary market. And how does it differ from a primary market? A primary market is a market where a company first issues its shares. For instance, if you're a new company and you want to go public, by going public, I mean you want to be listed at the stock market, you issue what is called an initial public offering. So that is your first time. Therefore, you do not trade exactly on the stock market, you trade on a primary market. But when you buy shares from the stock market, it is generally from existing shareholders who already own shares of the stock that you are interested in. So that's where you transact with potential buyers and sellers, however the case may be. Can we go to the next slide, please, Smith? All right. How do business operations affect the stock price? Okay. So, all right. Now, the price of a stock fluctuates based on the market sentiment. And the market sentiment is determined by a number of factors. For instance, you may see an increase in a stock price when, let's say, the profits of a firm increase, or they post, let's say, good revenue for a particular quarter, or an increase in sales. This is generally a positive indicator for the market and generally leads to an increase in stock prices. Favorable government regulations can do the same as well. For instance, you're a manufacturing company, all right, and the government makes it easy to get licenses, let's say in a mining region. So that is something that can help your firm in the long term. And that again is something that creates a positive effect in the market, a positive sentiment, because your shareholders know that you're going to prosper in the future, which would obviously mean them earning more from your stock. So that is something that also drives up the value of a stock. A strategic merger of acquisition again plays the same role. For instance, you're a company and you're looking to expand, let's say in a new nation. If you strategically acquire or merge with a firm that's predominant over there, it gives you a lot of advantage over current players in that you get access to market routes, you get access to supply chains, which makes your operations really easy. And thus obviously gives you a considerable advantage, which again translates into increased profits down the line. And again is a positive sign for investors. Timely payment of dividends. Now, like I said, some investors generally depend on the stock market or depend on their shareholdings for a regular source of income, primarily old individuals, because they want something stable. So again, if a company pays out dividends regularly and has a reputation of upholding the interests of its shareholders, then that again leads to a positive image for them in the market, and this also drives up their stock price. Similarly, losses or decrease in sales in a particular revenue in a particular quarter might, let's say, discourage certain investors. Some even sell their shares. So that is negative press for a stock. So that decreases the price of a stock. Anything negative, basically. Now, unfavorable government regulations. For instance, let's say you're a plastic manufacturing company. And if the government, let's say, imposes a plastic ban on on your products or services, on your goods. So it's going to be difficult for you to operate in the market. Now that is something an investor can foresee. And this obviously is not good news for an investor, because in the long term or the short or medium term, even that would really affect your profits. So again, that is negative press for your company, and this leads to negative market sentiment, which again drives down the stock price. Scandals or lawsuits. Now, scandals and lawsuits have historically played a huge role in driving the stock of a company into the ground. Any kind of scandal, lawsuit, anything controversial about a company quickly leads to speculation in the stock market, and it generally shoots up this volume of shares traded very quickly, mostly a negative press. For instance, when Apple and Samsung were on rivalry, right? Both of their stocks went into the ground based on daily changes in news. Like Sanya mentioned, rumors, all of that directly affects the price that a stock gets. And again, that's how the sentiment is determined in the market and the price goes down. Yeah, the last point is pretty much the same as when we talked about increase in stock price. Now, an investor or a group of investors that generally depend on their shareholdings for a regular source of income may be discouraged by a company's stock that maybe does not directly pay them dividends regularly. So that's about it. Do we have any questions? Once again, I'm going to pause over here. Do we have any questions on how we earn in the stock market, or any questions about how it affects businesses? So I think we can take them now. Feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat box if you have any questions at all.
We recommend that you go through the pre-session videos. It's a lot easier to understand through those videos. But just for the basic understanding, how you lose money is when you sell your stock at a price lower than what you bought it at. And how you gain money is when you sell it at a price higher than what you bought it. And also you get dividends. So that's how you earn by stocks. But the amount you invested in your stocks, if you don't sell them, it's not that simple to, just get back your money. So that only happens when the company is, closing down. And that also, if you're an equity, so there are two types of stocks, right? Equity and preference. We did not go into the details just because we wanted to touch upon the basics. So if you have an equity share, which is the most common sort of share, traded in the market, then you as an investor would be the last one to get paid when the company closes, the amount you initially invested, and that too after everyone has been paid. So you sell stocks to get your money back. You don't wait for the company to close down.
All right, I think we have a question from Sayam. Can any company first be public, then turn into private? Sayam, no, that rarely happens. It's only, a company may be stripped off the stock exchange if they do something scandalous, or if they close down, but most companies generally prefer to be public, or their whole incentive of, all right, let's put it this way. The only reason they become public is to raise capital. So by becoming public, what we mean is raising what's called an initial public offering. For instance, let's say you started a company with 3 of your friends, right? Now, initially, you were able to pool in funds from your friends and family. But further, when you want to expand operations, you need a huge sum of money that any one individual party cannot give you. So that is when you go for an initial public offering, where you invite the common public to buy shares of a company, and that's a way of raising capital for expansion of a business. So no, to answer your question, companies generally go public with the intention of staying public. All right. I hope I answered your question well, Sam. Zara, could you explain the concept of leverage in the stock market? All right. Okay, this is a little out of the scope of today's module, but all right, I'll explain it to you if you want, Zara. Now, with leverage, what happens is leverage is an active part of speculation in the stock market. So what happens with leverage is, for instance, you're a stock trader, right? And you have a broker. What you do is, with leverage, you buy stocks with money you don't have. Now that again goes into margin call. So what that means is, let's say you bet on the trends of a stock. For instance, you buy a stock earlier on, assuming, you let's say bet that a stock will increase in price, and you buy it in advance without paying. So you get the stock in your Demat account, but you haven't paid for it yet. That is buying on leverage. And this can be a risky business if you're not exactly sure, or if the stock decreases in value. And there are lots of complications that you also need to maintain a certain amount of balance. That's called before you get a margin call in your account. So yeah, I mean, that's as much as I can go into, because it's again beyond the scope of this. But again, leverage mainly means buying with money you don't have, buying a stock without paying. So you generally, there's a deadline, you have like 4 or 5 days to pay. So the way you make money is that you buy it at a lower price, and if you're right in predicting that the stock will, let's say, go up, then a few days down the line when the payment is due, you generally make a profit, because you only pay that fixed price from a few days ago. For instance, if the stock is, let's say, $100 today, all right, and you predict it's going to rise to, let's say, 150 in the next 4 days. So 4 days down the line, according to the deal that you made, you will still pay $100 for a stock that's worth 150 now. So you can sell that stock instantly and gain, let's say, $50 if you bought one share, or multiply that by the number of shares that you own. Does that help out, Zara? Thank you. All right, guys. Feel free to put in any other questions that you have in the chat box, and we'll surely get back to you. Moving on, how does the stock market affect individual businesses? So now we're talking about what does the stock market mean for you as an, let's say, as an individual entrepreneur. Consumer spending. So generally what the notion is, generally a rising stock market is aligned with a growing economy, and it leads to greater investor confidence. This is what is called a bullish trend, which we'll get into further. So generally, it's again about optimism. The stock market is more behavioral than financial. So when the stocks in the market are rising, generally, the sentiment in the market is really positive. That means people are confident about the economy going forward. They're confident about the companies that they trust in, and they think that the financial outlook or the economy will go in a positive direction. That is an indication of growth. So yeah, that generally leads to more buying activity, because investors are confident that they'll get a better return on their investment than investing any time later. Increased wealth in the economy often leads to increased consumer spending. Again, with a positive sentiment, when everybody thinks the economy is going well, it also increases the per capita income. So now when consumers have more income, they naturally spend more, and spend more and freely. All right, let's go to the second point. That's business operations. The market value of a company can be important. All right, wait, the rise and all right. So let's talk about the value of a company. Now, the value of a company can't directly be calculated at any point of time. It's literally calculated by the outstanding shares and the price of it. For instance, you have a company that, let's say, has 100 shares for $100 each. All right. So your market valuation today would be $100 into 100. That's going to be 10,000. Yeah, $10,000. That's what your market value, market cap is going to be. If, for instance, your share price rises to $150 the next day, let's say due to ease in government regulations, then your company's value will instantly shoot up to $15,000. So that is how market valuations work. It's just basically the price of a share multiplied by the number of outstanding shares that your company has in the market. It isn't directly affected by day-to-day operations, but that is something that changes over the long term of a company, and is again very much based in speculation. Now, that's the reason that you generally keep reading about Jeff Bezos, getting richer and richer every day. He doesn't directly earn those billions. It's just increase in the stock price of Amazon that leads to an increase in his net worth automatically. That's the same way it goes for companies. Now, market capitalization is the net worth of a company. And as an investor, that's what I meant by indirect increase in your wealth. So if you own a particular number of shares for a company and the price of their stock increases, you automatically become richer. Okay, I hope I was clear about that. The higher the share price, the richer you get. All right. Do we have any questions? I'll stop once again. Do we have any questions at all? We've covered a lot of stuff. Any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask them right now. Are we all clear? All right, I'll take silence as a yes. But again, feel free to put them in the chat box as and when they come to you. Over to you, Sanya.
Okay, so what are stock market indices? So indices, you must have heard of, Nifty 50 in India, Dow Jones, and S&P and all of that. So those are called stock market indices. It's basically a statistical measure used to measure the value of a section of a stock market. So these stock market sections, they're basically grouped together on the basis of, on the basis of categories and factors like industry, company size, national, regional. You can see this infographic on your screen. So it could be
Sorry
global.
to interrupt you, Sanya. Can you just speak a little louder? Preet says she can't hear you properly. Can you just speak a little loudly? Or maybe bring the microphone closer to yourself. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure. So what I was saying was that stock market indices are basically statistical methods used to measure the value of a section of a stock market. So similar stocks are, included on an index on the basis of various factors such as industry. So like if stocks of companies are, on the basis of, similar industries, then they are grouped together. And then that makes one index. So an example of that could be Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is a stock market index in American markets, and it basically has companies who are involved in industrial in industries and stuff. And S&P's 500, it's also an American stock index. And Nifty 50 is a stock index on the National Stock Exchange in India. So it basically has the top 50 companies, top 50 performing companies in India on the National Stock Exchange. So that's what stock market indices are. So here I would like to ask you guys if you know of any stock market indices in your countries or any other countries. You could type them up in the chat or switch on your mics. Smith, next slide. So these are the companies included. So the left infographic includes companies in Nifty 50, and the right one is S&P 500 and Dow Jones. So you can see popular companies. Sensex. Sensex is okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, Sensex is from Bombay Stock Exchange. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay. There could be many examples. Okay, moving on. Okay, so fluctuations in the stock market could be, observed from hour to hour, day to day, months, and even years. If you actually type up a stock of a particular company on Google, it will show you options to view the trends over hours or days or months or even years. So in the left infographic, you can see how the three stock market indices, Nasdaq, S&P 500, and Dow Jones on the in the American stock market, the fluctuations. You can see the fluctuations over COVID-19 this year. So here I would also like to point out that although when this pandemic actually started, the stocks fell down, and there were talks of a recession coming. And actually the British economy, as a matter of fact, I know that the British economy actually moved into a literal recession last month. So but then what I'm trying to say is that although the stocks fell, you can see that they're so the market is so dynamic that they rose up after a point. So in June you can see that Nasdaq went the highest it did this year. So stock market indices are really dynamic. The market is really dynamic and they fluctuate a lot. So it's not like if a pandemic is going on and the market is closed, but when it started opening up, the stocks did go up. And on the right infographic, you can see NSE, Nifty, and BSE Sensex. So it's an intraday rise and fall. So you can see that it opened on 11,290 points, but it closed down on 11,252, which doesn't seem like a lot of change, but you can see the fluctuation in the graph throughout the day, from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And similarly with Sensex. So this is how prices, stock market indices fluctuate in the stock market on a daily or a yearly basis. So let's talk about bulls and bears. So you must have heard these terms. If you are interested in the stock market, you must have Googled, you must have heard these terms somewhere. So what's a bullish and a bearish market? So bullish and bearish are actually terms used to represent trends in the stock market. So bullish market, when you hear the word bull or bullish, it means that the market is actually moving upward. It's tending to move upward. So then it's called a bullish market or a bull market. But if it goes downwards, it's called a bear market or a bearish market. And on the right infographic, the green one, you can see these sort of, rectangles and lines, and this is called a candlestick graph. So I won't go into the details of how you read candlestick graphs because it's a little higher level out of the scope of this module. But basically, these are the sort of graphs which tell you the opening price, the closing price of a stock, and how it's rising and falling throughout the day. So the red ones actually represent a bearish trend, and the green one represents a bullish trend in the market. So that's about it for stocks. I would really recommend you guys to go through the pre-reading, pre-session videos, because they're really helpful to understand what stocks actually are. They have explained stocks from the history of stocks, where they originated from, and it would really help you all. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Anya. Also, guys, I just had this random idea. Let's just have a little discussion, all right? Do you guys think that the stock market is, let's say, a good reflection of the economy? What do you guys think about that? Do you think you can rely on the stock market to predict where the economy is going? Just tell me your views on this.
Guys, if you want to speak in person, just use the raise hand feature in the participants column, and then Manav can pick on one of you guys to unmute yourselves. Otherwise, just put it in the chat box.
All right, guys. Please raise your hands or put in whatever you think about this in the chat box. There are no right or wrong answers. I'm just telling you to take a wild guess. It's good if you know. If you don't, then just take a wild guess. Do you think the stock market is a reliable source to, let's say, predict the economy's direction overall? Does growth in the stock market necessarily mean that the economy is going well? All right, we have some answers here. Alice says, I think so. Zara says, yes. Yeah, Projit, Apple did hit $2 billion valuation. Not 2 billion, it was $2 trillion, Projit. All right.
It was 2 trillion.
Yeah, no. Dwanil says no. Prisha says yes. Hitarthi also agrees. Tion, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, says I don't think so because there are many factors that can affect the company's performance. All right. Okay, so most of you tend to agree with this statement, and I believe Dhwanil said no. So Dhwanil, you are actually correct. Now, I'll tell you what that really means. Now, for instance, we did mention that, yeah, of course, all right, let's put it this way. When prices increase, the economy is generally going up, right? That's when prices increase. So that's a positive sentiment. But that does not necessarily mean that the economy is going to increase in the long term as well, or it could be a short-term trend. And I'll tell you how. Do you guys know about the 2008 financial crisis, or let's say just the world economic depression in the 1930s? Even at that time, the stock market was increasing rapidly. I mean, the trends were so bullish, people thought that the market could never even go down. Yet the economy crashed. And why did that happen? Now, that could happen because of lots of reasons. For instance, if we take the 2008 example, now that was due to lack of regulations in the capital market itself. That was something relating to bonds, which we won't go into. We won't be going into detail with. But again, now that was something that was absolutely not related to the stock market at all. It was based on government regulations and flaws in the system itself. So that is the reason we really need to be cautious while investing in the stock market. And it's always advisable that you invest surplus funds in the stock market instead of your direct income. So after you have earned, part of your savings should go into the stock market instead of directly investing all of your savings, because that could be a big gamble, especially if you don't understand the economy. All right, let me just read some responses. Shardul says, I don't think so, because the shares value increase, that doesn't necessarily mean the company is doing well and supporting the economy. Right, Shardul, you are absolutely correct. Because anything could cause the increase in share value, right? It could be some positive news, rumors, anything, because it's so speculative. Okay, enough on that, I guess. Do you guys have anything to add? Anything you'd like to share? Like Shardul said, do you guys have any opinions on this? Do you guys understand what I meant by when I said that the stock market is not reliable when it comes to the growth of the economy or the direction of the economy? Did you understand why? Guys, can we have like
Yes, no,
yes or
maybe.
no in the chat? If there's something you didn't understand, I'll be happy to go over it again.
You could put any question. Thank you for answering, you guys. Alice, why are you surprised? I mean, confused. Do you have any questions?
Yeah,
Do
do you
you
have a
want us
question,
to clear
Alice?
out something? Even if you have questions after this, you can write an email or
Tesla. Yeah, Tesla has been rising. Yeah, Tesla has been rising. I don't know for how long now. All right, guys. So I'll hand it over to Kash once again.
Hello,
Sources
sorry.
of finance.
Wait, how do you do the raise hand? Oh.
Oh, all right. Yeah, you go to the participants tab and just raise your hand. Yeah, Alice, do you have a question?
So the stock market only shows how the business is doing currently, but there are events in the future that can affect it, and therefore, is that how it works? I'm sorry, I just need confirmation on that.
Yeah. So, do you want to know how the stock market works? Is that what you're talking about?
I suppose how it's related to the economy. Can you repeat again? Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. I'll go over it again. So, all right. Okay. Let's say when the prices in the stock market are increasing rapidly, all right, when prices are increasing rapidly, that means investors are confident, because investors are buying up shares, that's hyping up their value. It's speculation, right? Anything that you want more of will increase in price. That's basic economics, right? If you have a pen, there's limited offerings, but lots of people want it, so the more people bid, the more its price rises. That's just how it goes on with stocks as well. So if more and more people are willing to pay money, that means that they're confident in the performance of the stock. And what is the stock market? Or let's say what's an index? An index, any index, let's say S&P 500. It's a group of the top 30 to 50 companies, even 100, depending on what index you look at, that shows the picture of the economy. So it's the highest performing companies in the nation. And I'll tell you why you can't trust on it. For instance, let's take the United States, the USA example. All right, the top 1% in the United States, the top 1% financially in the United States, uh, own 92% of the stock market. They own 92% of all shares out there, all stocks out there. And the top 10%, I think it's 97% for the top 10%. So just tell me, 1% of the nation literally controls the stock market. So do you think that's a reliable that's reliable for the prediction of the economies? The prediction of the economy as a whole for the entire nation, when such a small number of people have this immense power and resources. That's why I mean you shouldn't be trusting the stock market for the economy's direction. Do you get what I mean, Alice? Or do you want me to go over it again? Thank you, Alice. Thanks for your question, Alice. All right, moving on. Let's get back to Kash. And guys, keep your questions coming in, and we'll make sure that we respond to them. We'll also have a Q&A after we're done with all the topics for today. Thanks for your participation, guys. Over to you, Kash.
Okay, I'm the one who's saying sources of finance.
I'm so sorry. Sarah. I'm sorry.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Sarah. And again, we're going back into like a bit more content-heavy topics. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat, and we'll get to them eventually. So sources of finance is our next topic, and the reason why we're looking at sources of finance is because financing of your business is one of the most fundamental aspects of its management, because getting the financing right for your business means that you will not only have a healthy business, a positive cash flow, but ultimately it leads to like you being able to set up a profitable enterprise. So that's really important. And one thing to note is that financing can happen at any stage of your business's like development, but in most cases, it usually happens either when you're trying to start up your business or later on when you're trying to, I guess, expand or grow your business. So hence identifying relevant sources of finance is key for a business to succeed. Smith, next slide, please. All right, 1 second. Okay. So we first off have, we're looking at short-term sources of finance. So this is the money that's needed for the daily running of your business. And it just provides the working capital that is needed by a business function. And it usually lasts either a year or less in most cases. So the first sort of, I guess, type of short-term finance that we have is short-term loans, which is often needed by smaller businesses who are just on the verge of starting up their business, or they're probably just a year old, so they're quite small in size and don't have a large enough customer base yet. And short-term loans also mean that they're lower interest rates and they're easier to obtain and have to be repaid to the lender within a year. We then have something called debt factoring, which is an external source of finance. And this is where the businesses raise cash by selling their outstanding sales invoices to a third party. So to help you just understand what debt factoring is a bit better, I'm just going to give you like a scenario. So hopefully this will like make it a bit more clear. But let's say that a business makes sales of £100,000 per month, and its customers are given 60 days to pay back their invoices. So on average, the business has around 200,000 owed by customers at any one time, and it needs to then raise cash to improve its liquidity. So this business now has two options. So its first option is it can wait for the customers to pay their invoices, which will take 60 days. Or its second option is that they can sell these invoices to a factoring company for cash that they can receive instantly, which is at a discount as well. So option 2 is where debt factoring comes in, because this is where the business can then get up to 90% of their invoice value in cash now, rather than waiting for the 60 days while their customers pay it back. And the debt factoring company then collects the invoice payment from customers and sends the remaining 10% of the value of the invoice to the business for a lesser fee. So typically around 3% is what the debt factoring company then takes off the business as a fee for giving them the cash sooner than like what the customers would have paid. So hopefully that makes debt factoring a little bit clear. If you have any questions, do leave them in the chat and we'll get to them eventually. And then we have something called revenue streams, which is just a source of finance that's made up of the business's revenue. So it's just whatever money you get from selling your product or service to customers. And that can be in the form of either transaction revenue, project revenue, or service revenue. So yeah, Smith, next slide, please. Okay, and then the last two sources of short-term finance that we have is trade credit, which is a business-to-business agreement in which a customer can purchase goods on account without paying the cash upfront, and they instead pay the supplier at a later scheduled date. So usually the buyers are given either 30, 60, or 90 days to pay back the money. And then lastly, we have Treasury bill, which is a fixed income investments issued by the US Department of Treasury. So these are considered the safest investments due to them being government guaranteed. So there's low risk associated with them. And it also means that they have low interest rates of any fixed income security. Okay, I'm now going to hand it over to Priyanshi for medium sources of finance.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Priyanshi, and I'll be covering the medium-term sources of finance. So the medium sources of finance is basically the raise of money for the purchase of various assets that include either vehicles or any sort of equipment capital. These sources of finance have useful lifespans for a specific period of time, and this very source of finance usually includes a duration of period of 1 month to about 5 years. So that is when businesses can think of opting this sort of finance when they're progressing between 1 year to about 5 years. The first source is preference capital, which is basically the finance that is raised through the sale of preference share of the stakeholders. This source is used when a company potentially enters bankruptcy, and preferred stockholders are entitled to be paid from one company's assets before the common stakeholders. Next, we have leasing. The another method leasing is the use of particular assets such as machinery, equipment, or any property, which allows firms to use asset without having to purchase it with cash itself. With the thing with leasing is that the ownership lies with the lessor and not the lessee. And also it does not need to have a high initial capital outlay, and the lessor takes the responsibility of repair and maintenance of the asset itself. So the ownership does not lie between the lessee. With hire purchase is a credit purchase where it is also known as an investment plan, wherein a fixed asset is to be purchased on future date. The hire purchase involves price to be paid in installments by the client, and the ownership of the purchase is transferred after the last installment has been paid. With the basic difference between leasing and hire purchase is that in a lease the ownership lies with the lessor, and the lessee takes the right to the use of equipment and does not have the option to purchase itself. Whereas in hire purchase, the hirer has the option to purchase after they have paid the last installment. Another method is the treasury notes. This usually has to relate with governments, and these notes are interest-bearing securities that have a fixed maturity, of not less than 1 year and not more than 10 years from the date of issue. Right. So the treasury notes usually have to associate with the government, as governments are to purchase them.
We have a question, Priyanshi. Zara asked,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the lessor is the person who takes the leases the property. So a lessor is the person who owns the property. So think of it as franchisees. The franchisor is someone who owns the property, and the franchisee is someone who buys that property. But in this case, it's not buying; it is using that property after paying it with cash. If that clears your doubt. Okay, thanks. Now we move on to long-term sources of finance. I think, yeah.
Smith, can we go to the next slide? Okay, thanks. Okay, so share capital, as we've touched upon like throughout the whole module, is considered a long-term source of finance. Just to touch upon what a long-term source of finance is, basically the capital that is required for more than 5 years of a period of time. So it could go up to like 10, 15, 20, or maybe more depending on what your company needs. So share capital is considered a long-term source of finance at times because legally they are irredeemable in nature. And for an investor, these shares are a certificate of ownership in the company. So they're entitled to share the net profits and have a residual claim over the assets of the company only in the event of liquidation. So you can keep the share capital for as long as you want, and that's why it can be considered a long-term source of finance, because it could go for more than five years. Next, we have debentures and bonds. These are almost like share capital, but they carry a fixed interest rate, and they're usually what are paid off first. So they have to pay interest every year, no matter where the company is in position. So first, I think debentures and bonds get paid, and then people who have shares get their interest. And these also can last for more than 5 years. That's why they're considered long-term sources of finance as well. And then we have venture capital or venture funding, and the best example of this, which I think most of us are aware of, is Shark Tank. It's a form of private equity and a type of financing that investors provide to mainly startup companies and small businesses, which the investors think have long-term potential. So they not only put in money, but a lot of the time they come from it can be provided in managerial experience as well. That's why on Shark Tank you see that most of the investors have a lot of experience in business. So people generally choose investors that can provide them not just with monetary funding, but also advice or consultation. And they're considered long-term sources of finance because those investors generally stay with the company for over a long-term period of time to help them grow. And that's why it is considered a long-term source of finance. One last thing, which isn't in the slide, a basic, is a long-term loan. Loans have been spoken about in the previous sources of finance as well, but this just basically means that the payments are done over a longer period of time, and that's why it's considered a long-term source of finance as well. Okay, so asset securitization is on the screen, but I decided not to go that deep into it because it's a very, very heavy topic. But just to give you a brief idea of it, what it basically is where a company takes all of its assets and it puts them into one marketable financial instrument. And what that basically means is that they can group this like group of assets and then take them out as they want to be more as they want to have more assets or more capital to spend on. So what this basically does is increases the liquidity of the company, and the issuer of the group of assets can sell this to different investors in different levels. So you don't actually have to sell them all at once. So it makes the company have a long-term source of finance because they could keep that group of assets for a really long time and then sell it slowly and get more capital based on how much they need.
Guys, do we have any questions before we go over the recap?
All right, I think you can do the recap, Manav.
All right. So, guys, we learned about corporate finance, finance models, stock market, the stock exchange, stocks and businesses, bulls and bears, and souls of finance today. So, with corporate finance, we covered corporate finance being the division of finance that deals with how corporations deal with funding, sources of capital, structuring. Basically, any and every investment decision that a company makes comes under corporate finance. Then with finance models, we discussed about how companies use financial models for making financial decisions. So basically they weigh the pros and cons numerically on an Excel spreadsheet, mostly looking at how viable it may be to, let's say, invest in a certain proposition, invest in a certain region, invest in a certain opportunity. And yeah, basically, yeah, that's just about financial models. They're just used to make financial decisions for the company, short term, long term. They could be anything: acquired decisions about acquiring another company, decisions about going into a new market, decisions about expanding their business. Then with the stock market, we talked about stock market being the market for companies per se. So the stock market, in simple terms, is a market where you buy pieces of companies. It's just like a grocery store. You just, instead of picking up fruits, you just buy companies in bits. And with stocks and shares, like Sanya explained, is like taking apart, let's again, a slice of a pizza. That is a big company. If you denote a company by pizza, then a stock is a slice of that pizza. Stock exchanges are again the marketplaces where you buy stocks. These are secondary markets. So the stocks that you buy over here are already owned by individual investors like yourself. And a primary market is where companies go public for the first time. That's again called an initial public offering. So that's generally to raise capital for, again, expansion and just overall growth of the company. Then we talked about bulls and bears. So a bullish trend is when the stock market is rising continuously and the market sentiment is positive. So in a bullish trend, the stock prices keep rising and investors are extremely positive about the outcome of companies and the economy in general. So yeah, there's a lot of speculation and prices just keep on going up. An example of a bullish market right now, or a bullish stock right now, like Svet mentioned, is Tesla. Tesla has just been going up. I mean, it's to the point where there are lots of memes on Tesla going up. It just won't go down. Any and everything is around Tesla these days and Elon Musk. So yeah, that's because this company just keeps shooting up. Again, it's all about speculation, right? Tesla isn't doing anything out of the ordinary. It's just speculation. People are confident in Tesla and the way it's been performing. So yeah, they're just bidding up their price. Then lastly, we talked about sources of finance. We talked about short-term, medium-term, and long-term sources of finance. So again, a company decides to go. Wait, is my voice is lagging in between. Sam, can you tell me where it lags? So I can just maybe repeat that.
Your voice lagged when you were talking about Tesla.
All right, I'll go over Tesla again. So, I mean, it's nothing important. It's just that I was giving an example of a bullish trend in the market. So, Tesla stock has been rising rapidly for the past couple of months, and it's literally beyond technical and fundamental analysts as well. No one understands why it's happening. It's just rising to the point where it'll really be easy to find memes about it too. So that's a bullish market. Basically, the investors are so positive about Tesla that they are ready to pay whatever price for a Tesla stock. Okay, yeah, coming back to source of finance, we talked about three types of source of finance: short term, medium term, and long term. And a company again decides the way it's gonna go, depending on the reason they're raising finance. If they're raising it for long term expansion in the nation, they'd go for a long term source of finance. If they're just maybe trying out testing in a new country, they might use short term source of finance. If a company, let's say, on an experimental basis comes to let's say expands in a untapped market, they might use a short-term source of finance. If they're going for the long run, if for instance a company that's well established, for instance if Reliance, all right, let's take the example of Reliance. If Reliance wants to let's say enter the video games industry, right, now they have lots of funds, but they'd obviously raise capital, and since they are a permanent and a pretty successful market player in India, they obviously do that for the long term, so they'd use long-term finance. Whereas a company like, let's say, Lenovo, all right, a company like, let's say, Lenovo, that maybe does not have as much market share in India, would use short-term finance because they're going to be doing whatever they're doing on a trial basis. So that's just to mitigate their risks and depending on, again, whatever goal they have in mind. I think that's all for today. Yeah, I mean, we'll wrap up our session here. I really hope you guys enjoyed the session, and please feel free to ask away any question that you have, be it any topic.
There's a
that we covered today.
question in the chat
Mhm.
by Projit. How does raising funds over debt help the company if they can't generate on their own?
Ujjit,
Sarah, do
what
you
do you
want to answer that?
mean by if they can't generate on their own? I don't exactly get what your point is. What's your question exactly?
Is it related? I believe it's related to what Sarah was speaking about.
All right. Sarah, if you want to answer, Projit. Like,
Okay, I can help out with this. So basically what companies do when they are facing debt is they borrow more money with the hopes to like start a project or hopefully be profitable in the future so that they can pay off what they borrowed as well as their debt and then become profitable. And usually it's a really big risk, which is why companies don't usually do it. But you also see a lot of companies barely surviving and then borrowing more and more. And it does become a cycle that is pretty hard to stop until your company flat out goes bankrupt. But companies usually do that when they hope that in the future they can earn more money and become profitable. And that's why you see companies like Air India raising capital against their company. And most of the times it doesn't work out. But at times when a company's not doing so well and then they borrow money as when they have debt and they invest in something really good, or they come up with a really good project and then their stocks raise, their stock prices raise, or they start generating a bunch of revenue, then it is profitable for them. That's completely a risk that, you know, that's what entrepreneurs do. They take those risks, and that's why it's important to learn about finance.